Alright, everybody, JP Football Fanatics, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. We are now officially live here at JP Football Fanatics. How's everybody doing tonight? I know I'm doing really well. I may look tired, I feel tired, but I'm not giving up on anything. In that case, I'm not giving up. I'm not stopping this podcast just because I'm feeling tired for tonight. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you. Um, I hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope everybody is enjoying everything that's been going on within the last couple of weeks. I hope you guys enjoyed football, most importantly, because that's what this podcast is about. It's about football. It's about talking about all the games that happened this weekend. May not go as in depth as I did in previous weeks, because typically, I'll be honest with you, I've been so busy. And when I say I've been busy, I've been real busy with my other job. But I work in a school, so I definitely have a lot that's going on right now. Getting ready for the holidays and all that kind of stuff. But there are some key particular games that I do want to talk about with you tonight. So if I don't go in too much of depth of the each game that I have based on my NFL slides, I apologize for that. But I'm also trying to reduce the amount of time that I'm on here as much as I can. So that way, you guys don't have to be on here for typically 2 hours. So that's why I typically choose to, that's why I'm typically, I try to reduce the time as much as I can. So that's what I'm going to try and do tonight. I'm going to try and reduce it the best that I possibly can. Try not to talk about as much each of the games that I would like to do. But I am going to talk about some of the most important games, the most intriguing games that did go on this weekend. So that's basically what it's going to really look like for this weekend, for this week, as far as my weekly predictions, weekly recap goes. So, if you guys have not done so already, which, you may have done or you may not have done already, drop a like on this video, leave a comment down below. Every time I say this every week, your feedback and your perception of the podcast is just as important as what I think of it, because I feel like the more that I can get you guys getting going with all this, the better that I'll eventually be. So just please do me a favor, leave a comment down below, hit that like button too if you're able to, and also if you're able to as well, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. I'll pull up the subscribe button for you as well. But please be able to like, comment, and also please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And be sure to also, also be sure to hit the notification bell. If you hit that notification bell, it's going to make you come a long way. It's really going to help you. And it's also going to really help me too, as far as that you guys are showing more interest in my content that I want to be able to talk about with you guys and stuff like that. So, if you guys can do that, that would be great. So please do all those things if you're able to do that. Hit the like button, comment, and subscribe, and all will be good with that. So all being said, thank you so much. I do want to pull up something really quick because I want to be able to show you guys the playoff format, as far as what's the playoffs looking like so far and who are some teams that could potentially get in. So I do have it pulled up. So I am going to share my screen if I'm able to, which I should be able to with no problems whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that really quickly, so that way you guys can see what I'm sharing. I'm going to shrink this a little bit. Thank you guys for your patience too. It really helps a lot. All right, so here's the playoff picture right now. Right now, after the Kansas City Chiefs lost this week, the Buffalo Bills are at number 1. Right now, if the season were to end today, this is what it would look like. The Bills would be at number 1. Then you got the Chiefs going up against the Jets at home, which the Jets are the very last wild card spot, which there are going to be some teams that are going to be competing for it. So it's typically the Chargers, the Patriots are up there, the Raiders, and I think the Raiders might start battling back and maybe try to make a late playoff run here, I think. But we'll talk about them when we get to that. Then the next one down below, you got the Miami Dolphins at number 6, who would, if the season ended today, would play the Baltimore Ravens at number 3. Then you've also got the Cincinnati Bengals at number 5 that would go to Tennessee to play the Titans, and the Tennessee Titans are also leading the division right now of the AFC South. So, yeah, this is the AFC picture, what it looks like right now. Then you got the NFC right now. The Eagles have a first round bye from the way it looks, as they are 11-1, and they just got a nice victory over the Titans. Then the first wild card would be the Seattle Seahawks versus the Minnesota Vikings. Then you've got the Giants that are number 6. Then you got the 49ers that are at number 3, and they're leading right now in the NFC West, excuse me. Then the last one you've got the Dallas Cowboys, who are at number 5. And if the season would end today, they would play the Tampa Bay Bucks at number 4, which the Bucks got a big win, a very important win that they really needed against the Saints last night. So there you go with the playoff picture. That's what it looks like right now, and I think the teams right now that are looking to be able to get themselves in that's in the playoff picture run right now is of course the Commanders, the Washington Commanders, Detroit Lions, and Green Bay. The Falcons, the Cardinals are up there, and that's pretty much it. The only teams right now that there are already 2 teams that are eliminated from the playoff contention, and they are from both sides. And it's from the AFC side, it's the Houston Texans, and then for the NFC is the Chicago Bears. So those teams are out as of right now. Oh, and I see 2 of myself here, so I'm going to try to fix that real quick. There you go. All right, boys, so let's go ahead. Let's get started. And we will get into the weekly prediction, the weekly recap of how it went for this week. We'll talk about this game when we get to it. So, weekly straight up predictions did very well this week. Did very well. Was a little bit surprised. I was not expecting to do as well as I did. But I went 10-4-1. So, we did get one other tie this week. And it was the Washington Commanders and the Giants game, which was an interesting game. We'll talk about that when we get to it, because that's the game I kind of watched a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit more about one of the games I want to go more in depth about. But overall this season right now, I've been doing really well overall this season, and I'm 105, 85, and 2 on the season. So my top 10 teams after week 13. So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was going to go with the Patriots at number 10. But why am I picking the Commanders over the Giants here? Because technically the Giants have a better record than the Commanders. Yeah, that's very true. But honestly, the Giants slipped in the second half, as per usual. They slipped in the second half, letting up a big touchdown there late in the fourth quarter before going into overtime. But the Commanders are playing the right kind of football at the right time of year. They're pushing for a late playoff, pushing for a playoff spot at the end, which I think they will potentially get if the Giants kind of start to slip down a little bit. I think they have a very good shot of getting into a wild card spot. But the Commanders right now are pretty hot. They're a very hot team despite them tying with the Giants last week. But they're looking very hot. I think defensively, they're showing up to be the defense that we all thought they were going to be this year. And Taylor Heinicke is really not that playing bad of football this year. I think he's proving everybody of why he deserves to be quarterback number 1 on this team, because he really energizes. He gets teams going that he needs to get going, and he's just a very good leader on and off the field. So, Commanders at number 10. Number 9 is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens dropped. I believe they were at number 9 as well, or either that or number 10. But they're not going anywhere higher than that, because I feel like the offense, without Lamar Jackson, that was kind of like a big thing for Lamar, for him to be out in that game. That was quite unfortunate for the Ravens. But Tyler Huntley has proven that he is a pretty solid quarterback as a backup. He does a really good job with being the backup as a role. He didn't really have necessarily his best game, which was against the Denver Broncos, but he did push for that late game-winning drive, and he ended up getting that win over the Broncos. But I think the offense for the Ravens is starting to slip a little bit. I think they're starting to show more regression now than the defense did. Although the defense almost lost that game against the Broncos. They were losing for pretty much the entire game, which was quite a bit worrisome about them. But I have a lot of questions about the Ravens, and we'll get to them, when we get to talk about that game. Number 8 is the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins lost to the 49ers, which was expected. I thought that the Niners would come in and they would beat them at home, which is, exactly what happened. The Dolphins are still a good team. I really don't have a lot of worries about them particularly. I think they're still good enough to make the playoffs, and they could potentially really show that they could be a threat in the AFC, especially in that division against the Bills. Definitely not a lot of concerns here. I think their offense is going to do just enough to push them through the rest of the season to the playoffs, so I'm not concerned about them. Defensively has been playing pretty good within the last couple of weeks. The last 2 games they have, I thought they were playing quite well against the Niners for most of the game up until like the second half. I think Tua kind of regressed a little bit to being old Tua from that we saw the last year and the year before that. Number 7, we'll see if this team stays in the top 10 this year, despite on how it goes. But the 49ers are at number 7. Despite Jimmy G's injury, I think the 49ers are the most well-rounded team. I think they're the most complete team out of any other team in the NFL. Can't deny that. It's going to hurt a little bit not having Jimmy G. That's why I say they might fall out of the top 10 if they don't really continue the winning trend here that's going on. But they have an excellent coaching staff. They have an excellent defense. They have playmakers on offense too that can really, be a big threat in the NFC. Like Christian McCaffrey can do everything that he wants to do, and like Deebo Samuel, they're both pretty similar players in their own right. And if you have those two playing out and they're on the same field, it's hard to stop them. It's very hard to stop them. But I thought the rookie looked pretty good. I didn't think he looked too bad against the Dolphins, but we'll see how he does for next week. Number 6 is the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys came in clutch, and they came in and absolutely dismantled the Indianapolis Colts, which was, I didn't think they were going to score as many points as they did. Typically, it was 54 points. I didn't think they were going to score that many points, but they did. The Cowboys are continuing to prove why their defense is one of the top 5 units in the NFL. They're continuing why they're doing that. And they also show you the fact that they're also a running team, too. And Tony Pollard is a better running back than Zeke. Just to throw that out there, Cowboys fans. Number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. I don't care what anybody says. The Vikings are still a very good team. I think you watch this Vikings team in comparison to what we saw last year. They're a completely different team. They're more, I don't want to say they're the most complete team, but I feel like they're a much better coach team than they were under Mike Zimmer for the last 2 seasons. I feel like they got it more put together, and they have a better idea of how to stop teams and stop offenses in like final 2-minute drives. And that's why they deserve to be in the top 5, because when you look at Kirk Cousins and you look at Justin Jefferson, you can't beat that duo. No way. Number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs lost, but they're still good. They're still going to be up there in the AFC. They're still one of the best teams in the AFC. One of the most consistent teams in their division for sure, because the Chargers are very inconsistent. The Raiders are trying to push through something, but might be a little too late. Too late for that. And the Broncos stink. So the most consistent team that's really been playing, quite well has been the Kansas City Chiefs, except when they play good teams like the Bills and the Bengals. It's one of the 2 top teams right now in this top 10, and probably even in the NFC too. Number 3 is the Cincinnati Bengals. I truly believe, this might be a hot take for some people. Some people might not like what I have to say about this, but I feel like the Bengals are better than the Baltimore Ravens. I feel Joe Burrow is an absolute animal. He may not have the strongest arm per se. He may not have like a great arm like a Justin Herbert or a Josh Allen kind of throwing arm, but at the same time, though, too, when you watch this guy play football, he knows exactly what to do to win a football game. He puts pretty much not the entire team on his shoulders, because he has a lot of help in terms of weaponry. But as far as like offensive line, I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job. I thought they played well in this game. But they're turning the corner around. I think they're a team that really could make a Super Bowl run. I think they're a team that's going to be, very good. They could stop, Kansas City, or they could stop the Bills. They're really this is the only team I feel like that matches up really well with the Bills and the Chiefs. And I can't wait to see how the Bills match up against the Chiefs. The Bills match up with the Bengals within the next couple of weeks. Speaking of the Bills, they're at number 2. Still one of the best teams in the AFC. They're still my pick to go to the Super Bowl. I'll be rooting for them. Pretty much for, for the rest of the season, I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them for the postseason. Yeah, they're just one of the best teams. They have a really good unit of offense and defense. I thought last week against the Patriots was a game that really solidified that the Bills are a reason why they're still, the number one team in the AFC. They're proving why they're a Super Bowl favorite. They're doing a lot of the great things that they were doing in the beginning of the year that they didn't quite do the last few weeks. So Bills could really change their season around and really get going here. They may start getting hot. The number one, the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this was the most impressive win that the Eagles had this season against the Titans. I thought the Jalen Hurts in his passing game did an excellent job. I thought they ran the ball pretty well when they really needed to. But man alive, that passing game with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown absolutely burned all of the secondary for the Titans. So I'm sure that was something that was really good for A.J. Brown and this franchise to get a big win over a good, talented, and well-coached Tennessee Titans team. All right, so we're going to talk about this game. The Patriots and the Bills. This was at New England. You see a picture of Mac Jones. You see a picture of Mac Jones being very frustrated. And for very good reasoning, too. I think when you look at this kind of picture too, this kind of relates to like back when I did sports. So the kind of sports that I did, and I'll be quite honest with you, I was not a very good athlete whatsoever. So, if you try to look me up with, on the internet or whatever, and you want to know like what my stats were in like, football and wrestling and everything like that, good luck because I really wasn't a very good athlete. But from from an athlete point of perspective, when you see Mac Jones getting really frustrated, when you see Mac Jones yelling, whether if it's at a coach, whether if it's at another player, it's definitely showing you that there's something definitely going on in the locker room. And I feel with Mac Jones, for a guy that never really shows a lot of like big emotions like this, you never really see him really get aggravated or frustrated, or you never really see him really become vocal and really cause so much duress, I guess you could say, in and off the field, which I completely get, um because I, as an athlete, a former athlete, I definitely had my frustrated moments. I definitely had my moments where I basically would yell, or I felt that I personally didn't do something right. And if something's not working for me, that's definitely frustrating. Or if I'm not getting something, it's definitely very frustrating. Continuing with like my private life now with what I'm, with my current job that I'm working at. Um, but yeah, I mean, you watch this game right here. The Patriots just could not do anything. All right, they just could not do anything to stop the Bills. Just is exactly the kind of game that we saw last year when the Bills came into New England and they played in that game right before the playoffs, right before the wild card game, and then you watch the wild card game, and the Bills had nearly a perfect game. There was no punts in there, no turnovers, absolutely nothing. They scored on like every straight drive that the Bills offense had. That was basically what this game was really here. I mean, there was not a lot of mistakes that the offense for the Bills really made. They didn't make a ton of mistakes on offense and defense without Von Miller, which was a bit of a concern. I feel like when you did have you do have Von Miller in your defense, that typically does show you that you have a much better chance of winning games if you have someone like Von Miller on your team. But Von Miller wasn't in this game, so that really didn't mean much for anything. And really, what it really was to me is that it wasn't so much that the Bills' defense played really well. I think it was just more so of like showing the emotions and the dysfunction that's going on right now in the Patriots offense. And what I mean by that is that Matt Patricia's offense is basically you run in the middle, run in the outside, do a short pass on third down, and then if you don't get it, you punt. I think the problem with the Patriots is that they just not have been very aggressive this entire year on offense, and they haven't really tried to really make any big risks that you saw when Tom Brady was playing for this team. Ever since Tom Brady has left, the play calling, the offensive play calling has been much more conservative. The defensive side of things, however, has gone really well, really caught it almost like the right time of the season, but they start to dwindle down towards the end of the season. That's typically with what you would see in a Patriots team within the last couple of years. We saw the defense play starting to play really, really good and really good coverage and making good defensive plays. But then, like, December comes around and then, it's time to push for a playoff run. Then they kind of just slowly disappear. I don't know what it is about it. I don't know if it's Bill Belichick that's changing the defense that's going on there. But whatever that problem is, I think it's just a problem as like a coaching staff more than it is as a player perspective. Now, is Mac Jones playing his best football this year? No, I don't think he's playing nearly as well as he did a year ago. I still think he's better than Bailey Zappi. I really do believe he's better than Bailey Zappi. He is the quarterback number one for this team. But I think he's a system quarterback. I think if Mac Jones, if you give him a good offensive playbook, which you did have under Josh McDaniels a year ago, and then you have at least one or two really other good receivers, because who else does the Patriots really do have on offense besides Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris in the run game? Like, really, who else can you really turn the ball to? I mean, Hunter Henry's a decent tight end too, but you need like a really good deep threat kind of down like the field. Like, you need like someone like a Deshaun Jackson, or really, if you really wanted to, you could have gone after Odell Beckham, and then he could have been like, swerving around there between like wide receiver 2, 3, possibly. But he would have been good in like the end zone, and he would have been like your guy to like throw the deep ball to. So, yeah, I think it's the playbook. I think it's the offense that he's playing under. I think he's frustrated with like, the way that the offense is being played under Matt Patricia. I think he wants to take more risk. I think he wants to be much more aggressive on offense and be more aggressive on third down than they've been this year. And, I really do understand where he's coming from, because I feel like if you have like that opportunity to really push the ball down the field, if you feel confident in it, and then if you have like another good receiver that can go down the field in time to be able to catch your deep ball, that would be perfectly fine. But as far as like talent wise, like, there's really not a lot of talent on the Patriots offense as they want to make it out to be. And that's something that the Patriots organization and Bill Belichick, they normally want to just scrap up the best team that they possibly can, and they think they're going to make a gamble on it and win the Super Bowl. And that's just not how it goes. This isn't Tom Brady you were talking about. This is not Ben Roethlisberger carrying your team. This isn't Eli Manning. This isn't Philip Rivers the win you some games here and there every year. Or this isn't Tom Brady. Like I said, this isn't Tom Brady. This is Mac Jones right here. Mac Jones is a system quarterback. You get him in a good offense, you get him a good talent around him, and you get a good offensive line to protect him, he's going to be very successful. But if you don't get him any of those things, he's going to have a difficult time with playing football here. So I don't know what's going to happen with New England moving forward. I don't know as far as like what the rest of their schedule looks like. I think their schedule is going to be very hard, and I think this is like one of the one of the most important games that the Patriots would have had to have won, to really keep themselves in playoff contention, because the next few teams that they do have is going to be tough for them. It's going to be very tough for them, very good matchups for them. So coming up next Monday, they got to play the Cardinals. Then after that, they got to play the Raiders. Then they go back home and they play the Bengals. Then they go back home again and they play the Miami Dolphins. And then they got to go play the Bills in Buffalo the last week of the season. That's not easy. Definitely not easy for sure. I think maybe you can get maybe you're projected to win one of these games. I think they'll win at least one or two of these games. Let's say if they win the Cardinals and they win the Raiders game. Okay, Raiders are playing better now, but let's say that they beat the Raiders. Let's say they beat the Cardinals. But then you're looking at, an 8-9 record at most, and that may just miss you out of the playoffs. So if they want to make a playoff push here, they got to start playing football. They got to start playing the defense that they were playing earlier in the season. They got to allow Mac Jones to make a big play. They got to allow to be more aggressive on offense. And they got to stop punting it every single time. just to be conservative. You've got to really know how to win the game. You got to really push for, for what you want if you want to be, a successful team. You can't be that conservative on offense. If you're going to want to throw the ball down the field, if that opportunity is there, and you take a look at the defense and the coverage that they're playing in, you got to take advantage of the deep ball because most teams have already figured out your scheme on offense. And it's clearly not working. It's clearly not working because you've lost 2 straight games in a row where you could have probably beaten them, beaten both the Vikings and the Bills, but you haven't because of your offensive coordinator not making the most aggressive calls out there. So we'll see how the Patriots do as far as their playoff push here. Are they going to get themselves in the playoffs? And if you would like to, guys, I kind of want to see where you guys think about this. Do you think the Patriots can make a playoff run, or do you think they just miss out? Just leave a comment down below and tell me what you guys think on that. All right, so Aaron Rodgers continues to own the Bears. I'm not going to take too much longer in this game, but Aaron Rodgers also is starting to figure out that Christian Watson is his man in the red zone. He needs to continue throwing to this man in the red zone and in the end zone for touchdowns and scores like that. And that will definitely help out fantasy players as well. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers continues to own the Bears. They came in, they won 28-19 or something like that. The Bears had the Packers pretty much on their heels. I think they were playing good football. Based off of what I saw in the NFL red zone, they were really running the ball over the Packers, which is something that, is definitely not surprising. We knew that if you run on the Packers, it's almost very easy to run on the Packers. That's exactly what this team is doing. That's exactly what the Bears did. But they just came out on the short end of the stick, and that's where Aaron Rodgers was able to make his magic. That's how he ended up winning this game. But it was good for Aaron Rodgers. It's a good win for the Packers. I think they're going to just miss the playoffs. I really do. And they're definitely not winning the division right now. I think pretty much the Vikings have pretty much clinched that. But yeah, he still owns the Bears. I still think they can make a late playoff push if they continue to play good football, if they continue to play hot. Aaron Rodgers plays back to where he was, the last few years. They could make a playoff rush, but at the same time, they're definitely unlikely, just given with the injuries and the lack of talent on defense that they have. All right, the Steelers hold off the Falcons late. 19-13 was the final score for this game, and Kenny Pickett yet again had another solid game against the Falcons. I thought he did a very nice job taking advantage of the very inconsistent pass rush of the Falcons. He was able to really connect very well with his receivers, I felt like. I thought they had some really good stats in this game. I think it was very impressive. I think Kenny Pickett is continuing to show that he might be the franchise guy for this, for this franchise. I think I think this is the guy that, he may not be like a Joe Burrow. He's not a Justin Herbert. He may not be Patrick Mahomes, but, he's his own player. He's his own quarterback, and he's going to do what he can to win games. He's going to put you in good situations, and that's exactly what he's been doing. That's exactly what he's been doing within the last 2 weeks, and we saw that against the Colts, and he's doing that here. And what I really like is that this is pushing now more for, other receivers to make their time shine. I know George Pickens was kind of quiet on Sunday. He was kind of quiet. He didn't really do a whole lot. But they took advantage of the run game, and they did, pretty decent there with Najee Harris and Benny Sneal. And they also got Pat Freiermuth. They got Deontay Johnson getting involved in there yet again, and they also got Connor Hayward involved in there, which was awesome to see. His very first NFL touchdown in his entire career. That's a special moment for the Hayward family. So that was good for them to see. The Falcons, on the other hand, offensively, they continue to show why they're not going to be a playoff team. They continue to show regression as far as pass rush of defense, secondary. Secondary is maybe the only consistent thing for the Falcons right now defensively. And then they continue to show you why they were supposed to be 2-14. I think this is a game where the Falcons probably could have won this game. They had a very good shot of winning this game if they were to make some some quick pushes here and there. But I think with Marcus Mariota, too, I think him playing quarterback, which he has been playing solid this year, I'm definitely going to give the guy credit there. He has been playing solid football. I don't think he's been playing all that bad like everybody else wants to make him out to be. But there are a lot of things that they got to clean up. I think they have a good run game. They need to continue focusing on their vocal point of the run game. I think they need to continue splitting time with Cordell Patterson and Tyler Algier. I think Tyler Algier is probably going to be the future at some point, given the fact that Patterson is getting older, but the fact that Patterson is still playing at this level right now that he is still very good. And then the top receiver, which was kind of surprising, we haven't seen it much this year, is the rookie Drake London. And that's something that Marcus needed to get more involved in the offense. And that was something that he was able to do and is very successful with it. I think you get more involved with him if you get a good quarterback that can make good connections with him, or if you continue to roll with Marcus Mariota for the rest of the year and he can find some more targets to throw to. I mean, I think Drake London is your man. You picked him, you picked him in the draft for a reason. You gotta use him. Gotta use him more often. Gotta put your trust in him. Zacchaeus is also very good too. Very quiet in this game. He only had 2 receptions for 13 yards. But Drake London ended up being the main guy, the main attraction for the passing game. Just unfortunately, the Falcons couldn't do enough to pull out a victory. So, is this going to be the end of the Falcons? Is this like the end of their playoff push here? Potentially, it could be. Given with what they have left, their schedule, what they have left. I mean, don't forget they got to play Tampa Bay. They got to play the Saints again one more time. Maybe they'll get a win against the Saints. It depends on how Andy Dalton plays. They got to play the Ravens, and then they got to play the Cardinals. So, they got about 4 games left. They're on a bye this week. You're looking at it potentially at best, maybe a 9-8, but that's kind of highly unlikely. So maybe not. I'll let you be the judge of that one there. All right, guys. Might be starting a little bit of controversy. I might be starting a little bit of arguments going on here and whatnot, but I don't care. I'm going to talk about it anyway, okay? So, about Mike White. Let's talk about Mike White, okay? I get that the dude has talent. I 100% agree that there's definitely a lot of really good flashes of good quarterback play in Mike White. I absolutely agree with that. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever. But is he NFL starting caliber? He could be wrong. He could make me wrong and say maybe he does, maybe he will be. We'll see. But he continues to prove to me why he is not a long-term answer. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon after his really good game against the Bears defense, a very trashy Bears defense. Okay, congratulations, Mike White. You had one great game against a trash defense like the Bears, okay? Now, the Vikings defense is also not very good either. I don't think they're that impressive whatsoever. I think it was more of the defense for the Jets defense, more of them keeping them in the game than it was the Vikings in terms of like their defense and stopping them. Just take a look at the stats for what Mike White had this entire game. Yeah, he threw for 369 yards. Okay, so that stat line is impressive, okay? But he threw 2 picks, and that's okay. I mean, listen, good quarterbacks could do that sometimes too, throw picks and no touchdowns in a game, and still come up short. That does happen. I will absolutely agree with that. But the thing that kind of really gets me is that this guy they want to go ahead and paint him as the best quarterback for this Jets team. Okay, so maybe he might be better than Zach Wilson. He might be, but I'm not making that comparison yet with Zach Wilson and Mike White until we see more of Mike White play for the rest of the season, which looks like he will be unless an injury comes up or they feel like Joe Flacco is going to come in, which I think Joe Flacco should be starting over these other 2 quarterbacks. But I digress with that. You got to give Mike White the shot that he deserves. I get that. But he's not the starting quarterback that people want to make him out to be. I think he's made some nice throws. He had some nice throws in there. But he also was, not that aggressive. Sometimes the offensive line for the Jets, sold him short. Sometimes the receivers sold him short. I get that. I totally get that. But for someone to be an NFL starting quarterback, which I'm definitely not saying I would ever be an NFL starting quarterback. No way in my entire life. Nor would I ever be able to even be on the roster for any NFL team whatsoever. But to be an NFL starting quarterback, like, you got to have some consistency. We did see some flashes of Mike White. We did see him have a good, some good drives here and there. But really, the story of this team is not because of quarterback. And that was already the deal with what we saw when Zach Wilson was out there and Joe Flacco in the beginning of the season. Like, we already should know that it's not about quarterback. It's not about the offense that keeps them in the games, but it's the Jets' defense. It's the defense that is so solid. It's the defense that, really keeps these Jets in the game, not quarterback. But offense is an issue, though, because of the quarterback play. I do agree with that. But Mike White is not your starting quarterback caliber for this franchise. I personally don't believe he is. Maybe we'll let him play another couple of games. Maybe we'll see what happens. But he's not, right now, to me, he has flashes, but he's good enough to be a backup quarterback, though. I think he should stay in that role of backup quarterback. Let him play a couple more games and see what happens, then you make the switch. But I think if you were ever to trade for Mike White, I think he's at best your backup quarterback. I don't think he's your starting quarterback. I personally don't think he is, because I think I just saw, with these back-to-back games here where he played against the Bears and you play against the Vikings, there was definitely some inconsistencies there. You have one really good game, 1 week, and then the next week you have a really bad game, but you still come up short. And it's really thanks to your defense. That's how I feel about this. That's how I feel about this game right here that happened. So that's all I'm going to say on the Jets, though. I think the Jets are still a good team. They have a good shot to make the playoffs, but it's all going to depend on quarterback. I think it's going to really depend on how this offense goes, how they flow, and how consistent they stay. That's what it is. But nice win for the Vikings. It was a pretty close call. I think they probably could have won by a lot more than what they did. But I think the Jets defense got to them eventually. I think they were able to figure out what the Vikings offense was able to do. I think they did a really good job with coverage in some moments here and there. But they also were mismatched too with Justin Jefferson, that they had a hard time really getting at, really stopping. So another nice win for them. And like I said before, A.J. Brown continues to, he owns his former former team against the Titans. Like I said, the Eagles had a very nice game. I thought they had maybe, do I want to say it's their best game? Maybe not exactly their best game, but so I had to take a sip of my water there. Maybe not their best game, but I think as far as their best win in terms of playing against a team with a winning record, and that's what the Titans do have. They do have a winning record. And they did play well. I thought they did play really well against it. And like I said, I think the Eagles did everything right. I thought their defense played exactly the way that everybody thought they were going to play this year. No, really not that much of surprise that they were going to keep the Titans to 10 points anyway. But I was really impressed with the run defense. If I'm being honest with you, I was impressed with the run defense, because that's where the most inconsistencies of that defense and where the most holes show up in that defense. And they're very susceptible to the run normally. And we saw that last week against the Packers. And we saw it a couple other times this year too. But to hold up Derrick Henry for, I don't even know how many yards that Derrick Henry had in this game. I know it wasn't very many. And knowing that I had him on my fantasy team too, and knowing that he was less than, I don't even think he even mustered 50 yards. I'll look at the final numbers for this really quickly. But yeah, he only rushed for 30 yards, 11 carries and 30 yards. That's something that Derrick Henry, you never see Derrick Henry ever do. You see him rush for maybe close to 100 yards. Over that, maybe be the end zone touch guy, the end zone touchdown guy that you turn the ball to. Absolutely. But yeah, no, I mean, the Eagles defense played the run very well. I thought they were able to stop Derrick Henry. They kept him out of the game because they knew that the Titans love to run the ball, and that's the only thing that they really can do well in. Ryan Tannehill, again, I'm defending Ryan Tannehill. I know a lot of people aren't very fond with him as far as like his quarterback play and the way he handled the Malik Willis situation. But I still think he's still having a solid year. I think if Malik Willis were to start in this game, he did get a little bit of playing time. But if he were to start this game, that they wouldn't have even scored a single point in this game, I feel like. Ryan Tannehill, with his limitations of who he's got at wide receiver, Traylon Burks is basically his number one guy. Some talent. I think he's a good receiver. He'll turn into something special in the future. Just not right now. I think he'll be the guy in the future that he'll probably start to turn to. But like everybody else that he has, I mean, Austin Hooper, Dontrell Hilliard, Robert Woods, who's really not anything special anymore. Nick Westbrook might have some good games here and there, but not any like top-notch wide receiver guys. And if you got to be the team that's got to do one-dimensional and running the ball, so be it. But I thought the Titans defense was very susceptible the entire game. I mean, they couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass very evidently, very clearly. They couldn't stop Jalen Hurts from making big yardage. They couldn't slow down A.J. Brown. Yeah, they just couldn't do anything to stop them, which was very surprising considering of when you look at this Titans team, and you take a look at the defense, the other team that they lost to, that they got absolutely blown out by this year, was the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills are the best team in the AFC, or one of the best teams at least. So you expect them to do that, and then you expect them to lose big against the Eagles, too. But then you've got, some close losses in there, too. I mean, you lose to the Giants. Right now, the Giants are kind of going downward a little bit. You lose to the Chiefs, but you only lose to them by 3 points with Malik Willis, who didn't really get anywhere, didn't score a single point yet again. He didn't score a single point in the second half or get anywhere near the red zone. All right, and then you lose to the Bengals by like 4 points there. You come up just short against the Bengals, who could also make a Super Bowl run. Your defense is matching up with certain teams very well. But then you look at teams like the Bills and the Eagles, these two games right here were just complete mismatches. They were not good matchups for the Titans secondary whatsoever. And that definitely showed here with the Eagles. The Eagles were way too fast. They were definitely way too much for them to cover. They couldn't slow A.J. Brown down, which I thought they would have done much more of stopping A.J. Brown, but they weren't able to do it. He was just all over the field in that game. And Devontae Smith, too, got to give that guy credit. He deserves to be, on the borderline of wide receiver 1 or 2. Maybe he would have been maybe a wide receiver 1 on another team elsewhere that would really need it. So a nice win for the Eagles. I think it was one of the best games of the year for the Eagle, in my opinion. I think they're kind of, I don't want to say they're going back into the direction where they're going to start performing better and playing better. I think this was more of the Eagles defense just having more of a fluky game with where they were able to stop and slow down Derrick Henry than it was really anything else. I think it was more of a fluke performance by the defense. But as far as offensively goes, they were able to do whatever they wanted to on that Titans defense, which, again, is very disappointing. You would have expected more out of the Titans defense considering of how good they've been in previous weeks against some good teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals, those teams, you name it. All right, next one, we want to talk about Deshaun Watson. I don't want to talk about him too much, but we will talk about him right now, though. So a very rusty return for Deshaun Watson. So not surprised there. I'm definitely not surprised there. And I had to start him in fantasy this week because I was down at quarterback. Long story short, with Deshaun Watson, he just, even the couple of plays I watched him, play on NFL Red Zone, I didn't get to completely watch this game. If I'm being honest with you, I really didn't. But I feel like if the Texans' offense was good, if the Texans' defense was a lot better than what they showed here, the Texans probably could have won this game. And they probably could have won this game, but because of how much Deshaun Watson showed that he really, really, really needs to get back into the practice room. And that was kind of like the concern, like coming back for Deshaun Watson, that was for this Browns team, because we didn't know how he was going to handle himself. We didn't know how he was going to be able to adjust to this new offensive playbook, learning now in Week 13 on December 4th, 2022, in his very first uh, debut with the Cleveland Browns. Like, we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that he was not going to have his best game of the year. We knew he wasn't going to come out and be really sharp, and he absolutely wasn't. Just watching the throws that he made, and you didn't even need to watch the entire game to really realize how much more work that he needs to do before he's ready for playoff contention. I feel like the Browns are going to miss the playoffs this year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They will miss the playoffs this year because I think they definitely would have needed him a lot sooner in the season than they do right now. Because if he were to, let's say if he was out for 7 weeks of the season, okay, if he was out for 7 weeks of the season, he probably, at this point in time, he probably would have adjusted better to the offense, and maybe he would have gotten some plays going on. He would have made some crucial passes. He would have made some really good touchdowns, and maybe he would have rushed the ball a little bit and maybe run with the ball a little bit, because he is very good outside of the pocket too. But he's definitely shown you why he needs a lot of work. He showed that he's very rusty. He's not adjusted to the offensive playbook. And then you kind of look at it, it's like, well, you've been suspended for, 12 weeks of the season, which I, totally get. I mean, you deserve that. But what have you been doing in those 12 weeks? Like, I feel like if you're an NFL player, okay, if you're an NFL player, I get it. It's hard to get back into the groove of things. I get that it's very hard to come back and, play really good football after, you've been out for quite some time, for nearly 2 years. I get that. But I feel like, don't you think he would have learned a little bit more about the offensive playbook right before going into the game? Like, I wouldn't have expected a perfect game for him, no way. But I feel like he probably should have prepared himself more, I would have thought. Even if he wasn't able to practice with the team, like, he could have practiced his throws. He could have practiced, like, something out off the field a little bit to ensure that he's learning the offensive playbook. He was knowing what he was supposed to do and what have you, because he signed this big contract for 5 years for $230 million, and they're basically betting their whole entire franchise on you to be like the next guy that can take them to a Super Bowl and win. Like, you gotta practice. I mean, you gotta really know the game. You gotta really understand the limits. You gotta understand your whole offense around you, because it's not anywhere near with what the Texans did. It's not anywhere near what you did with the Houston Texans. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't see them going to the playoffs this year, especially with the way Deshaun Watson played. I think he's going to be rusty for the rest of the year. I don't really expect them to really have a major impact on this team and push them to a playoff run, given with what they have left in the season. They got to play the Bengals again. Then they got to play the Ravens. Then they got to play the Steelers. And then you got to play, I think you have to play another team or two. I'm not sure exactly. I'll pull up their schedule real quick. So, got to play the Bengals. You got to play the Ravens. Got to play the Saints. Got to play the Commanders. And then you got to play the Steelers. So, a lot of those games right there, got to really win them all out. Maybe you beat the Saints. Maybe you'll upset the Commanders. Maybe you'll beat the Ravens. Maybe you'll beat the Steelers again. I don't know. But I'm not saying that they're going to. I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs, although I don't think they will. I'm not saying they will or won't. I don't think they will. But if they don't win some of those big games, like against the Ravens, against the Bengals, the Saints, Commanders, the Steelers, like if they don't win any of those games, they won't make the playoffs. Even if they just lose just one game, they might be just short of the playoffs. Just saying. All right, so I did watch this game, and I want to talk about it a little bit, okay? So the Commanders and Giants game, this game ended in a tie. I thought the Giants played well in this game, considering with what they have, considering the lack of depth that there is in the wide receiver market, and them not signing Odell Beckham back was, a very, a big disappointment, which I wasn't surprised to that they weren't going to do that. Wasn't surprised they weren't going to sign him anyway. But, I thought they played the Commanders well. I think, Jones had a pretty good game. I think Saquon had a good game here. Offensive line was a bit shaky here and there, but they didn't do too bad. I think it was more the Giants' defense that led up this game. They let up in the final 2 minutes. And knowing Giants fans, including myself, knowing how these kind of games go, you can't give up that kind of touchdown in the last 2 minutes of the drive and playing that offense. But that also does show you about the Commanders and how good of offense that they really are. It really shows you how good of the offense they really are with Taylor Heinicke and how limited he is. But given the talent and given the connection that he has with Terry McLaurin, really shows you something, and that really should scare a lot of teams. Just going to throw that out there. And defensively, too, for the Commanders, played well. But they played better, I felt like, in the first half than they did the second half. I thought they let up some big yardage. I think they, tried too many times to let the Giants get back into the game. As do I think about the Giants' defense. I think they let the Commanders back into this game way too often. And, this game probably could have had a winner in it. I think the Commanders, or I think the Giants, really, if anything, the Giants, if they were to have gotten that safety in overtime, the game would have been over and the Giants would have won that game. And that would have been absolutely crazy. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not disappointed in a tie. I would have liked to have seen a winner. I would have liked to see the Giants kind of get this because they absolutely need this win. But I'm not that disappointed about it because it could also, save them. Also could save them too, maybe, for a playoff spot. But it would have been better if either one of these teams would have won. And I think the Giants had every opportunity to win this game. I thought their offense was clicking. I thought defense, had some good moments here and there too. They were able to force some turnovers. But, again, it's like with the Giants every year. You watch them play, you see how bad their offense is, and they're out there for way too long. And they get tired in these kind of drives. But, yeah, not much more to say about this game. Moving on. All right, no Lamar, no problem. The Baltimore Ravens and the Denver Broncos, low-scoring affair, continues to show you why the Broncos offense is absolutely dreadful. And they continued that against the Ravens defense. And, yeah, Tyler Huntley, made quite a few mistakes in this game. Very crucial mistakes, too, especially throwing that one pick in the end zone there. You can't do that. But I give the guy credit. He took his team all the way down the field and was able to score a touchdown out of it with like 20-some seconds left. It wasn't a good game for either team. It was not whatsoever. It wasn't a good offensive game for either one of these teams, but defenses continue to show why these two teams continue to win these games. Especially for the Broncos, for the defense. I mean, if you're looking at the Broncos defense, they keep them in a lot of these close games that they play. They really do. And for them to not win any of these games based off of their, how good their defense plays, just shows you how poorly mismanaged this team really is. Especially on offense. But Tyler Huntley, I feel like, is a good backup. I think he's really good as a backup. He's very, very, very similar to Lamar in a lot of ways in terms of rushing with the ball, knowing that the Ravens are a run-first team. The defense, they love to get pressure on you on the blitz. They did exactly their game plan. Really, I feel like, to be honest with you, didn't really change from having Lamar Jackson out of the game to Tyler Huntley. I don't think it really changed at all. I think it was the same game plan that they had, and it worked out well. That's really all I got to say on that. So thank you. All right, guys, let's talk about this game, or let's at least talk about this team. So Jimmy Garoppolo, he is out for the rest of the season. And the question is this going to affect a Super Bowl run for the 49ers? Yeah, I think this is absolutely going to affect this season. I think it's absolutely going to affect their Super Bowl run. Now, you lose Trey Lance in the beginning of the season, and he's like your top guy. You want to trust him. You want him to play the game for you. That's great and Danny, whatever. But then he gets hurt in the second game of the season. Then you roll back to Jimmy G. Then he gets hurt. Now you're down to your third-string quarterback of Purdy. Now, if I was Kyle Shanahan, if I was the 49ers, and I'm looking at that cap space, you know who was also just released this week? If you have not heard already, do you know who was released this week? From the Carolina Panthers, one of the quarterbacks, and it's been Baker Mayfield. He was released from the Carolina Panthers this week. So, my personal opinion, would it make the most sense for the 49ers to go ahead and pick up a quarterback like Baker Mayfield? Probably could get him for cheap. I think you can get him for cheap now that he was released by the Panthers and not traded. Would you prefer the 49ers to pick up Baker Mayfield, see how he does for the rest of the season, could get you to a playoff game or two in place of Purdy as your backup? I would pick him up. Quite truthfully, I would pick up Baker Mayfield. I'm not saying anything bad about Purdy. I don't think he's a bad backup whatsoever, and I think he proved that in this game. But is he the guy that's going to take you down the stretch and win the rest of the season? Well, I'm going to pull up their schedule here. I'm not going to change the screen or anything, but I'm going to pull up their schedule here and see who else left that they have to play. So they played the Dolphins. They won that game. Next Sunday, they got to play the Bucs at home. Okay. Tough game right there. Playing against Tom Brady. Anytime with Tom Brady, you play against Tom Brady, always a tough game. You got the Seahawks. You beat them earlier in the year, but we'll see if you can beat them again. The Commanders, that's a tough game right there. Raiders, potentially, that's a tough game. Cardinals could win this game, potentially, but also very possible you could lose that game as well because it's a division game. So it's not like the 49ers are playing the Rams twice again. They already beat the Rams twice. They're playing some tough teams. This is like the bulk of their schedule, the rest of their schedule. They're playing potential playoff teams. The Bucs, the Seahawks, the Commanders. Those are already three legit playoff teams right there. If you lose all three, you're done. But if you win one of those games, or you at most could win two, Seahawks, Commanders could win those two. Maybe Bucs you could beat two if your defense plays well enough against Tom Brady. You could look at 3 wins right there. Highly unlikely that will happen, but you could get 3 wins right there off of potential playoff teams in the NFC. Then you got to play the Raiders. That's going to be a tough game regardless, in my opinion. I think it will be a tough game. Maybe a bit of a mismatch. Maybe a bit of a mismatch for the Raiders' defense that's not very good. But regardless, it'll still be a tough game. Very tough game. Cardinals, again, you've had some struggles with the Cardinals in the past. You could lose that game also. So very likely this season could drastically change. And if you don't get a veteran quarterback or a quarterback that's been in the league for a while and has experience, like Baker Mayfield, if you get someone like that on your team, maybe you'll muster out a win or two. And if you can muster out at least a win or two, maybe you can sneak into the playoffs at 10-7. Just maybe you could. But that really does depend on how Baker Mayfield would get along with his teammates. We already know he already has somewhat of a relationship with Christian McCaffrey. We know that already. But with all this talent, this could be like Baker Mayfield's last chance to prove that he's a winning quarterback. With this loaded roster of the 49ers, this is Baker Mayfield's last chance. If I was the 49ers, I was John Lynch, I would take him. I would take the risk and gamble it a little bit and I would take Baker. Or at least to back up Purdy if Purdy does not go well. You can afford it to at least lose one or two of these games. But after that, you continue to lose, got to put in a veteran quarterback in. Got to put in a veteran quarterback. That's all I'm going to say on that one. So, like I said about the Raiders, they are roaring back their way to a possible playoff run. I think they have a very good chance. I really believe the Raiders, Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr, I think Derek Carr is playing the Derek Carr that he was last year, in my opinion. I think the last several weeks that we've seen him play against the Broncos, I think that turning point game was the Colts game when they lost to Jeff Saturday. I think was the turning point for this Raiders team because they've won 3 straight games in a row since that loss. I think they're finally turning things around. The offense is looking exactly what we thought they were going to look this year. Same with Derek Carr. He's playing exactly the way we thought he was going to play. Defense is still a bit of a problem. They're still a mess. But that connection with Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, and then you're running the ball a lot more, which is, huge credit to Josh McDaniels for finally letting that happen. And it is something that the Raiders needed to do for the last several years or so since Josh Jacobs joined the team. Now Josh Jacobs is playing his best football of his career because of Josh McDaniels, because of the play calling. And everybody was quick to wanting to fire Josh McDaniels. Now all of a sudden everybody wants to jump on the Josh McDaniels wagon. So I don't remember exactly what I've said on the show about Josh McDaniels, but I will tell you right now, as someone that has had a lot of respect from New England over the years, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, etc., Josh McDaniels has always put up a good offensive plan. Always has. Now, the Raiders, for the last several years at least, or as long as I've been watching football, have been offense first. So, the Raiders did good by getting McDaniels because McDaniels is an offensive guy. I think that was already the best thing that you could do. And I think getting Devontae Adams, I think putting Josh Jacobs in the playbook to utilize him more and make good calls, offensive play calls, with Josh Jacobs in there, I think that was something that you needed to do. That's something that we hadn't seen the Raiders be successful in until this year. And they've been completely successful this year with running the ball, with Josh Jacobs, having the best time of his career. The offensive playbook for Josh McDaniels is something that the Raiders had not seen yet, especially Derek Carr, who's been used to multiple different coaches, head coaches, and etc. This is a different kind of offensive playbook that Derek Carr has had to learn this year. Now, he has not had a lot of pretty moments this year. There have been a lot of games where the Raiders have lost, where they shouldn't have lost. And I will agree with that. Maybe this would have been a different picture if the Raiders were to have won the Cardinals. If they were to have beaten the Cardinals after leading 20-0 at halftime, they could have beaten the Chiefs the first time in Kansas City, and they could have beaten Jacksonville. If they were to have won at least 3 of those games, we're looking at a possible 8-4 record for the Raiders. That's how drastically this team would have changed if they could potentially be 8-4 rather than 5-7. So you can't put all the blame on Josh McDaniels. McDaniels has not had the best start to his head coaching career. He was already fired when he was the head coach for the Broncos. But now that you're with the Raiders, a dysfunctional organization, an organization that may not have had a lot of success in recent times, but to get an offense going like the Raiders, their offense has been clicking now since that Colts loss. This is the team that we thought they were going to be this year, especially myself, and this is the team that I was expecting them to be since the early part of the year. Forget about defense for a minute. I didn't think defense was going to be that great to begin with. But you got to give McDaniels credit for turning this team around a little bit at least. You've got to give McDaniels credit for the play calling that he's been doing. And you've got to give credit to the other players that have not really said a lot of bad things about him. Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Jacobs, Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, which, by the way, Chandler Jones signing for this team was not very good. Darren Waller, who's been out for some time now. Foster Moreau. There's not really any players that have really said anything bad about McDaniels or blame McDaniels for anything that I saw, at least. Maybe a couple of weeks ago they were feeling their frustrations, but it wasn't because of the coach. It was a team effort. That was the problem, because they weren't picking up the offensive playbook fast enough. And they were in situations where they had plenty of opportunities to win games in the earlier slate of the year, but they hadn't. And that's why they were in the situation that they are. Now they got to play catch-up, which is very hard to do at this point in the season, where you have other teams that could potentially sneak in that last playoff spot. And the two other teams that are just on the outside looking in are the Chargers, which is an AFC West foe to the Raiders, and then the Patriots, who you're going to face the Patriots in a couple of weeks. So I'm not saying the Raiders are definitely out of it. I think they can definitely make a late playoff run. I think it's very possible, because their schedule that they have to play at the end of the year, look at what they got to play. They got to play the Rams on Thursday night. Then they got to play the Patriots. They got to play the Steelers, the 49ers, and then they got to play the Chiefs one more time. I think they could possibly beat the Chiefs at home. I think they have a possibility to beat the Patriots. As crazy as that might sound, normally Bill Belichick may not always lose to his former coaches, but that's a good possibility that Josh McDaniels could go in and win at home. Then you could beat the Steelers maybe, and hope that Kenny Pickett does not have a good game. And then you should beat the Rams. Should definitely beat the Rams with a third-string quarterback and with a bunch of third-string players who almost beat the Seahawks last week. I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about the Seahawks-Rams game, because that game was an absolute joke, and the Seahawks should have won a lot more. Absolutely should have won a lot more points than they did. 27-23. Like, come on. You lose to third-string players like that, really? Can't do that. Can't win by 4 with third-string guys. Just can't do that if your team's supposed to be better and the team's healthy. But that's all I'm going to say on that one. But regardless, yes, the Raiders have a chance. And this is their last slate of games. And they've got to win the rest of the season. They can't afford to lose anymore. So very possible for them, because the Chargers could likely miss out, and so could the Patriots. All right, next game. Burrow continues to own Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. No question about it. Joe Burrow, man. Anytime he plays Patrick Mahomes, it's always a fun game. Always a good game. Always been decided by 3 points. Last 3 meetings. Been decided by 3 points. Exactly. The Chiefs, I just think this is a tough matchup for the Chiefs, especially defensively. I think it's a tough matchup for them. I think offensively, too, I think it's a tough matchup for the Chiefs. No question about it. Not a lot of mistakes by either team, per se. I didn't think so, personally. I mean, I didn't see any really big, crucial turnovers that changed the whole dynamic of the game. Maybe, I think there was a fumble maybe in this game that kind of set up the way for the Bengals to win. But I thought the Bengals did a nice job. I mean, Jamar Chase was kind of quiet throughout this game. I will say that. I think he was quiet for most of this game. But he was helpful. I think he helped out the Bengals to win some games when they really needed to, though, to get some plays in when they really absolutely needed to. I think Samaje Perine, that backup running back to Joe Mixon, can prove why he could be a starting running back elsewhere or for this Bengals team if they decide to keep him or they decide to let go of Joe Mixon and another team can pick him up. Like, there's a lot of depth for this Bengals team, guys. Like, it's not even funny to even talk about. Like, it's not even funny. They have so much talent. It's crazy how this Bengals team is good. Even without a good offensive line, they still win games. They still are 8-4. Now, to imagine if they were to have won the earlier games in the season, like if they were to beat the Cowboys and if they were able to beat the Steelers in the beginning of the year, and if they were to have beaten the the Browns or the Ravens, this team could definitely be undefeated. Maybe they wouldn't have beaten the Browns. I think the Browns was a very, very floppy game for the Bengals at that time. But imagine if they were to have won those 3 games that were decided by 3 points or less. Could have changed the dynamic for this team. Absolutely. I think with the amount of talent that they have, the defense, exactly the kind of defense that we saw last year in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, like if they could play exactly the way that they played this week, Bengals are going to be a pretty tough team to beat. No question about it. They're going to be a tough team to beat. And I think with Patrick Mahomes, he showed the frustration. He had a really hard time stopping this offense. Had a really hard time. Was not able to do the whole lot of things that he normally likes to be as like the magician. Like he would probably do against the Raiders. Or what he would do against the Chargers, like pull out magic. Or to play against the Bills and, take the game into overtime with like 13 seconds left. You know what I mean? Like this Bengals defense is tough on Patrick Mahomes. And if they were to play, and if any other defenses play exactly the way that the Bengals defense plays against Patrick Mahomes, they would be a lot more successful in winning these games. But they just do a good job. They outcoach Andy Reid. They outplay Patrick Mahomes. Like, this is like a rivalry that I believe it's going to start brewing within the next several years. Like, everybody thinks it was going to be Mahomes and Allen. That's definitely going to be one. But I think Burrow's going to be in that mix now. I think if Justin Herbert can probably get his team going, maybe he'll be up there someday. But those 3 quarterbacks in the AFC, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, all quarterbacks right there right now are all players that could potentially, start having rivalries between one another because they're all very special guys. They play exactly the way they're supposed to. They put up good numbers. They play good teams very well, but they also have their mismatches too. But they've proven to be very special quarterbacks in this league. And for Burrow to go ahead and beat Mahomes 3 straight times is absolutely astonishing. It really is. So, it was a good game. I really thought the Bengals offensive line played well. I think they were able to make the blocks when they really needed to. And instead of like Jamar Chase being like the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase show, like Samaje Perine helped out with this offense a lot. And I think he was the vocal point for this offense to the success. Knowing how good of a pass rush the Chiefs is in their pass rush and running the ball significantly well, knowing that you can run against the Chiefs defense, makes a big difference. They didn't ask Joe Burrow to do like real crazy things. And in the moments when he had to make plays happen, he was able to make them. Jamar Chase was able to help him out. But more importantly, too, T. Higgins. T. Higgins is proving why he could be a number one receiver. And if he were to play for any other team, he proves why he's a number one receiver. Minus his injuries. If he didn't have all the injuries like that all the time, he would be elsewhere. If he were to go anywhere else, he would absolutely be a number one receiver anywhere else. And he could potentially be a wide receiver one for this team, too, along with Jamar Chase. Like, those two could go back and forth on being the number one receiver. One game, it could be T. Higgins' turn, or one game, it could be Jamar Chase's turn. It all just really depends. It really does. But it shows you why you need someone like T. Higgins in this game. It shows you why you need T. Higgins in this on your team, for sure. But I really liked this game a lot. It was I feel like it was one of the best games of the week. And not that there really wasn't that many great games this week. But I really liked the way this game was to pan out. I think it was exactly the way that everybody thought it was going to be. I pretty much pictured it like being like this too, being like maybe one team is leading by double digits and, maybe have a little bit of a comeback, and then the final game ended up being won by a field goal. That's how I envisioned this game. And that's exactly what this game turned out to be. So, definitely not the last time we'll be seeing the Chiefs and the Bengals. We might see these two teams go at it again later on in the postseason. So, when that time comes, guys, you better pop up that popcorn, pour some butter on it, salt or whatever, and get going for that game, because it'll be something really special for the postseason game, if these two teams meet again. All right, a couple more games left. This one won't take as long, but the Cowboys defense comes to life in the second half, man. The Colts offense stinks. I was hoping they would come back a little bit. They looked like they were going to come alive a little bit after that touchdown pass to Alec Pierce from Matt Ryan. I thought the defense would have played a lot better in the second half to make some adjustments. But they got absolutely dismantled in the second half. And it's all thanks to the Cowboys defense that was able to turn this game around. It ended up being it was a very close game in the beginning for the entire time. Looked like it was going to be that way. But then you look at the second half and then boom, you score 54 points overall for your team. It's absolutely crazy. But I also want to make mention too, Tony Pollard should be the starting running back for the Cowboys. That's all I'm going to say on that. And last but not least, Tom Brady's improbable comeback against the Saints. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I watched this game up until halftime. Then I went to bed because I was extremely tired and needed to get up for work the next day. So I was absolutely tired. So I woke up this morning. Okay, I woke up this morning and I was looking at my fantasy stats. Just by the way, I didn't win any games this week. Bummer for me. Might be out for the for the playoffs for some of the leagues I'm in. But I have Chris Godwin in one of my leagues, and I want to see how he turned out overall. I knew I was going to lose that fantasy game regardless, but I want to see how I did against with Chris Godwin in there. And then I end up seeing the score 17-16. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, by the time I went to bed, it was 10-3 Saints. Andy Dalton threw that big touchdown pass to Taysom Hill, and the Saints defense was completely owning Brady, it looked like. And then they hear about them winning 17-16, final score. Watched the final closing, the closing time of that game. Andy Dalton, really, I don't blame Andy Dalton for losing this game for the Saints entirely. I thought he looked like he had a good game, especially with the parts that I was able to watch of the game. But I think it was more of the Saints defense that kind of let Tom Brady come back into the game and win. Because if they didn't have made those big defensive plays, they probably could have, won this game. If they were to have not have made some big mistakes and crucial mistakes there, and if penalties weren't a factor, the Saints probably could have won this game. Because they were absolutely playing outstanding defense, and it was something that was kind of expected. I thought it would have been a defensive game for both sides. And for the most part, 16-3, that's kind of a lower end of the scoring in this game. It's kind of lower scoring. But the way that Tom Brady came back in this game, for other quarterbacks, it's improbable. But for Tom Brady to do it, made it look very, very easy. And I thought they had a good game plan. They looked the most organized team than what I saw since the beginning of the year. They looked, they looked good defensively. They made big defensive plays. They forced some mistakes, and then they were able to draw penalties where they needed to get them, of course. And then offensively, Godwin becomes your number one guy. He gets some good moments in there. And then Rachaad White getting into the passing game. You get him and Leonard Fournette in the passing game. That's how you're going to win this game. You let Chris Godwin be your number one target. You let him be your number one receiver. You get your running backs in the passing game. You have good chances of winning this game. And that's exactly what Tom Brady did. They weren't getting anywhere with putting the ball on the ground. They've been historically, at least for this year, they've been historically the worst run offense in the league. They have not been able to run the ball successfully this year. And that's why they had to start passing the ball more. And Brady did just that. He was able to throw the ball to Rachaad White, who I think is going to be splitting a lot of time with Fournette heading into the future weeks of the season. Towards the end of the season and into the postseason. But regardless, though, the final 3 minutes of the game, touchdown to Cade Otton, or whatever his name is, Cade Otton, your tight end. You get that first touchdown there, make a stop on 3 downs. The next possession for the Saints, you have them forced to punt the ball away. Then you drive all the way down the field, and you get a touchdown by your running back, Rachaad White, to make probably the most crucial touchdown of his career. With not having to use your last time out in that series, you played a smart football game at the end. Now, 17-16, yes, it has not been the best offensive performance for the Bucs whatsoever this year. But at the same time, when you win this kind of a game, in this kind of crucial moment, and your season's on the line, it's almost like you won a Super Bowl. And knowing the Bucs and the Saints rivalry for the last 2 seasons since Tom Brady's arrival there, this is the first time he's beaten the Saints at home this year. Last 2 times he's been shut down at home. And then the last time they played, they were able to beat them in the Dome. So that's good for Tom Brady. It's a huge win. It is an absolutely huge win for him. It doesn't solidify the division title by any means, but they continue to show you why that you can't count Tom Brady out. And I'm sorry, Tom Brady, that I picked Andy Dalton's team over you. I apologize for that. And it wasn't necessarily because of you, because I never like to pick against Tom Brady. Every once in a while I will. But I decided to do it in this game because it was the Saints. The Saints have had a lot of success in Tampa Bay. And that's why I had to go with the Saints, because of that history. And I kind of wanted to go with the underdog of Andy Dalton to see what he could do. And he was almost able to pull it off. But the defense was really the reason why they lost this game. If the defense wasn't a factor here, maybe they would have won. For sure. I think they would have definitely won this game. And Tampa Bay would have probably not scored a touchdown. But, I mean, I would say it was one of Tom Brady's better games this year. And again, I don't typically like to put all the blame on Tom Brady. I mean, there have been some moments this year where it has not been very pretty for him. But I think this was one of Tom Brady's better games this year. I think this was one of the better defensive games for the Bucs this year, in my opinion. And I feel like it was a better coached game. I felt like they had a better game plan. They were planned better. They looked organized. I felt like they felt confident. They kept composed. in this rivalry. And I think when you stay composed like that and you don't make any stupid mistakes, you win games like that. And with all that being said, everybody, that concludes my Week 13 recap reaction video for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys were able to listen and tune in. To those who were able to tune in at the time, thank you so much for doing so. Right before you leave, guys, please do me a favor. Drop a like on this video. Leave a comment down below about the content. Maybe you might want to see some different content heading into the next future weeks of the rest of the season. And even as we approach the off season, maybe you'll want to see some more content there too. So just be sure to drop a like on this video. Leave a comment down below about the content and what you want to see. Also, too, if you're able to, it's been a while since I've had one of these, but be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you do all that, you will be helping me out, and you will probably get better, bigger, and better content to talk about as the weeks and months and possible years go forward. And with all that being said, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you all have a great night. We will be seeing you tomorrow night, Wednesday night, at possibly an earlier time frame than normally I do at 8 on Wednesday nights. So I might be doing it at 8 o'clock, might be doing it at 9 o'clock. But just keep your eyes open for a Facebook post right after this, and I'll share it with everybody. And yeah, so that will be it for that. With all that being said, everybody, thank you. Have a great night. We will see you all next time. This is your boy JP Football Fanatics saying peace.